So, read book number 3 out of my 10 books in 10 weeks challenge. Did this week's book, well, last week, sorry, but this third book being The Fog by James Herbert. Just so you guys know, I've redoing the same video. It's like the 10th time I'm doing the same video. Every time there's always something bugging, like audio not syncing, image turning black for no reason, or video being corrupt. I'm still trying to figure out that whole process, so sorry about that. Good. So yeah, sorry about this, by the way. Book number 4 is going to come before that video. It's already posted. It's scheduled to come into place at noon. Right now it's like 11 a.m. So it's in an hour for you guys. Not for you guys. That video is going to come afterwards. So yeah, sorry about that. Things being like it is. Yeah, it's just gonna come a bit later. Sorry about that. So about the book, The Fog. Just so you guys know, divide the video into 2 different parts. First one being spoiler free, and second part being filled with spoilers. So when I'm saying spoiler free, there's going to be minor spoilers probably. So if you've not read the book and you are sensitive to spoilers, stop the video right here, go read the book, come back afterwards if you want. Just because it's a review, so of course there's going to be spoilers along the way. I just decided to divide it into 2 just so I leave the more spoiler for the end. So if you are somewhat not inclined to spoilers, you can watch a little bit, then stop, come back afterwards, or just not watch it, or watch the entirety if you don't care about spoilers, and read the entirety and come and read the book afterwards. Me personally, I don't really care about spoilers, so you could tell me spoilers and I'd like to read the book afterwards. Also, I don't really care. For me, the book is always about the journey, not the destination, just like in a road trip. So I still want to figure out usually how it goes to the destination. Finally took a sip. So yeah, about the plot of the book, essentially it's about the story. There's an earthquake in a small town called Wiltshire. I'm going to write some stuff down, some names at the bottom, just because I don't know how to pronounce these English city names, village names. So I'm going to write these things at the bottom here. So yeah, there's an earthquake. From that earthquake, a big crack appears, a big hole, crevasse. It's crevasse in French and crevice in English, I think. Crevice. Well, a cliff. There's a hole with cliffs appearing. They're a huge thing in the middle of the village, killing off a lot of people right off the bat. That's like second page or something like this when people start dying. So it's just, there's no arc, there's no getting there. It's just, it starts with a bang and never stops until the end. There are some length here and there, but I think they're welcome though, those lengths here and there. I think they're very useful to move the story forward, because if it was just action throughout the entirety of the book, you would come out exhausted from that book. And just so you guys know, I've read that book into 2 sittings, actually. It's like almost 400 pages, but it's just so... yeah, just so. I'm going to leave it at that. The review is at the end, so... let's continue with the story, though. So, yeah, there's a gas coming out of that hole, and with that gas, forming itself around that gas, fog's going to create itself actually from the gas, because the gas is going to feed itself off of CO2, so carbon dioxide. So the fog is going to feed itself off of that and grow more and more as it goes through different villages and towns. And we know, because of all the cars we have, all the pollution that there is in the environment, the fog is actually going to feed easily on CO2, carbon dioxide. So out of the people who all die within these first pages, 2 person fall into the hole but manage to get out of the hole. So our main character here, John Holman, survives. He rescue a little girl out of the hole, bring her back out. The little girl unfortunately dies afterwards. And that brings me to some trigger warnings, because nature doesn't care about who you are. A lot of people die, children also, animals. So there's child abuse, murdering of children, of animals, of anybody. There's rape, there's murder, mass murder, child murder, animal abuse, rape, suicide. Yeah, forgot to say that. Essentially, the fog is turning you into a psychopath, a killing machine, and when you're through with all of that and you become kind of exhausted, you become depressed and you kill yourself afterwards. There's a comparison to be made with a more recent movie. That book was written in the 70s, I think 75, something like that. There's a parallel to be made with a bad movie, unfortunately, but bear with me with the comparison. It's The Happening by M. Night Shyamalan. I don't know if I'm saying his name right. Sorry if I'm not, Mr. Shyamalan. But The Happening, I'm just going to say The Happening when I'm going to talk about that movie. Saying that in the movie, you breathe in the thing from the flower and you just commit suicide. It's kind of the same thing here, but before you commit suicide, you commit mass murder and terrible things before. And here it's done in a clever way in the book, which was not in the movie. I'm going to talk more about that when we go into much more spoilers, though. So in The Happening, the thing that's killing off people, it's flowers. Here it's mushrooms. It has something to do with mushrooms. And once again, it doesn't care who you are. It's just going to kill you no matter what, and so on. So Holman and the little girl go out of the hole. Both of them breathed in the fog, the gas, the mushroom thing. And so that's why the little girl dies afterwards. She doesn't commit suicide. It's just that her brain kind of melts by itself. So even if you don't commit suicide, by the end, your brain's going to melt and you're going to die. Hallman, though, survives and gets cured of the fog. And the reason why he gets cured, he got a blood transfusion. I don't want to spoil too much why it cured him. It's kind of more or less explained within the book. But he survives. He had a blood transfusion because he tried to slit out his throat with a piece of glass that he found on the ground after getting out of that hole. So he survives. On his way back to his house, he comes within... he finds the fog again, or the fog finds him. I don't know which. Make your own conclusion. But gets into the fog once again. Into the fog, he sees a school bus that had an accident. So all the school, it's a school class that was out to the museum or something like this. and they were on their way back to the school and got trapped in the fog and had an accident, sorry. They had an accident in the fog. So Holman is going out of the fog and warning the police, hey, a bus has been trapped because of a fog near here. Um, you should go and check it out. He goes into his house, has an altercation with his girlfriend. I forgot to say it, but he was with his girlfriend into the fog when he found that school bus. There's domestic violence there. His girlfriend's trying to kill him, essentially. So he attached her with tape, I think, on his bed. The police comes. They're like, "Hey, they're arresting him because of domestic violence for something else." Also, I don't want to say why. Read the book if you want to know why. But he gets arrested by the police. Then he warns the police. He's like, "Hey, I think the fog's doing something to our brain just because of what happened to him. Him trying to commit suicide. His girlfriend doing that, trying to kill him also." He's warning the police that something's off with that fog. He's like, "Hey, maybe you should need to check out that school that I've came across in the fog." Police are like, "Okay, yeah, let's just..." They're not believing him. They really don't believe him, and you can't blame them. The guy seems kind of weird. Yeah, the guy looks weird, and he attached his girlfriend to his bed, so he's weird. So the police goes to that school. Something bad really happened in the school. It's one of the goriest thing I've ever read, most disturbing thing I've ever read, and that's so good. It's not necessarily that it's... And that's the thing that I really enjoyed by that author, is that there's a fine line, and he never goes beyond that line of exposing too much, saying too much stuff. He's just there, spot on, saying just enough so your imagination do the rest of the trick, does the rest and just builds the scene for you. So yeah, the school scene is just brutal. The rape scene is just disgusting in a kind of a good way. And it's just there. I mean, the gore is useful for us to understand just how nature doesn't care who you are. It's just going to kill you no matter what. You don't have a say in that. I really enjoy that. That's why I really enjoy cosmic horror also, just because of the feeling of insignificance you get from these books. Like, you don't matter. You're just nothing in the scope of things. And I really like that about this book, just how humans, no matter who you are, you're just going to die because of that damn fog. So the school thing happens. The police are like, okay, we might believe you, but we need something else just to make sure that it's, really the fog and it's not just a coincidence. Here I was like, yeah, it's really a police thing to say. I truly believed it, I truly believe that policeman would say something like this, even if it's that big of a deal. That being said, something bad happens again after that in the city of medium-sized city, I think, for England. But I think in England it's a rather medium-sized city. It's like 200,000 people or something like that. So what happens here, once again, trigger warning, everybody that comes into contact with that fog commits suicide, so there's a scene of mass suicide. The one thing that's very well done here, that's poorly done in The Happening. So in The Happening, you're an external viewer, you're just seeing stuff happening, and it becomes kind of risible, not laughable. It becomes kind of funny just because of you're an outside viewer, you're just so far out and you're just seeing all these people committing suicide. Here it's personal, you're you're seeing the point of view of someone who's trying to survive that madness. She's on the beach, she's trying to get out of that mass of people committing suicide, and she can't. She's trapped because there's just so many people. And it's sad and horrific because you're just seeing it from her point of view, and not just, and there was people marching to the sea and dying and drowning. No, here you're like trying to survive, trying to get out of that mass of people and failing, and in the end having your lungs filled with salt water and just dying. So right after the scene where she drowns, now the government is going to be involved. Police reach out to the government and are like, hey, we've got a bit of a situation here. A fog is killing off people, making them into maniacs and killing off each other and so on. So from now on, we're going to jump into really heavy spoilers. So if you've not read the book again and you kind of worry about spoilers, stop watching. Otherwise, you're welcome to stay and continue with me with the more spoilery thing. I'm not going to go really scene to scene. From now on, it's just going to be just an overview of what's happening. So good. Chai tea, by the way, with some coffee and honey. After that, government gets involved. Yeah, heavy spoiler from now on. Government gets involved. They talk with the army. The army already knew about this because it's not a natural thing. So one discrepancy with one thing that's not similar with the happening was really natural. Here it's man-made. The scientific guy that the scientist who created the gas, the molecule, the mushroom thingy, died like 30 years ago when he created that fog because he got infected by that gas and went mad, destroyed all his papers and killed himself afterwards. So destroyed all his notes and everything. I'm gonna say something. It's not very clear in the book as to if the fog is smart, sentient, intelligent, use whatever word you want. But me personally, I really think that it is intelligent, and that's kind of part of his plan of growing outside of that lab, was to kill off its maker, destroy all his notes, so nobody knows what the fog truly is. It's not clear in the book, as I said, if it's the case or not. There are some hints here and there pointing towards that, but also pointing into the other direction as to it not being smart. Maybe just being like with some basic instincts, like a plant has some instincts, to grow and get bigger. So maybe the fog has the same thing. But I truly believe that it's more than this, that it somehow got a brain and it's trying to evolve bigger and bigger. The scientists died. Everybody that were kind of involved with that died or are no longer working for the government. So 30 years ago when that scientist died, the army decided to seal off the gas and bury it underground for nobody to see. But the earthquake brought that thing out. The earthquake also is not natural, it's man-made. They were testing bombs. One of these bombs were way bigger than they imagined, and it created that earthquake that released the gas. And the army was following the gas but keeping it secret because they wanted to try and contain it themselves, but they failed. And that's going to be kind of the point of the whole book. you always fail. Because now it kind of becomes natural and bigger than us. And it's kind of a warning of human experiments, things getting out of hands, viruses being able to reproduce themselves and become so much bigger than that we can no longer do anything about it, and thus beginning to be a natural disaster, even though it was man-made from the beginning. But yeah, it's kind of a warning. So yeah, the army already know. Now since Hallman is immune, he's kind of the only guy immune to the fog. Uh, so they ask him to go into the fog and get a sample, just so they can make tests to better understand what exactly is going on with that fog, what exactly it is, and study it. He fails all 3 times. That's once again, human failing in the face of the unknown, and us just not being enough, our technology just not being enough. In the end, we need human beings to do the work. So he fails. The 3rd time he goes into the fog, he sees that the fog goes in underground. And here's why also I think that the fog is sentient. I think that somehow the fog remembered being underground before and kind of goes back there. It's just like when you're facing a stress or something like this, you might go into a fetal position or whatever just to feel comfortable, or when you're a child you're sucking your thumbs and stuff like that. So I'm extrapolating, but those are my thoughts on the fog being smart, being a sentient being. So Hallman calls up the army, radio them. He's like, hey, we need to blow that tunnel just to seal the gas inside of it. So I said blow the tunnel, but blow both entrance so it collapses on themselves and effectively sealing of the gas within that tunnel. They fail at that. They succeed in collapsing both entrances. 3 guys from the army are sent there to make these explosions. The fog goes out of it from ventilation or a manhole or something like this. So even our ingenuity works against us because we need to ventilate tunnels, and the fog is using that to escape. Gets pushed by the wind to a refinery, gets pushed by the wind or goes there on its own accord, because we know that a gas refinery is filled with carbon dioxide and pollution, because it's not the only thing that it feeds off of, all types of pollution, I think. So yeah, it goes there, it grows more and more and more and more. The guys from the government are like, we need to blow it up. They succeed in blowing the refinery up, effectively, quote unquote, burning the fog. We just don't know if it's the entirety of the gas and fog, because the book kind of ends there. The guys from the army dies. The only survivor is Hallman that goes back to his apartment, and the book just ends there. We don't know if there are some stuff left, if there's some gases left somewhere. We just know that it seems to be destroyed, but it's not the first time that the fog seemed to be destroyed within the book, so I don't believe that it is. Once again, I believe that it's an intelligent being. Not being, but it's intelligent. It has kind of a brain or instinct or whatever to a certain degree, and I just think that it wants to survive, and I just think that it did survive the explosion, that there's still the fog left somewhere, and it's just going to come back at a certain date, at a certain point, maybe 50 years later, again, when all the humans that were involved in that just died and disappeared. You could make a sequel out of that, maybe make a movie that is a sequel of this, and just have the fog reappeared like 30 years later or 50, yeah, 50 years later, I think. 75, 22, yeah, 50, almost 50 years later. So maybe make a movie in 2025 and make it 50 years later. Everybody that were involved with that are either dead or really old and don't really, not really involved into politics and what's going on. So my thoughts on the book, definite thumbs up. If not a masterpiece, this is a master class in horror writing. It's so well done. You know, the fine line between too much exposure and not enough is well kept throughout the book. I really liked that the author didn't take me for an idiot. I like that in authors. I don't like authors that take you by the hand and explain everything to you. Let your imagination go, wander off. I really enjoyed that about this book. I don't know why I've never read any books by this guy. I need to read more. I think he's gonna become one of my favorite horror author, if other books are as good as this one. I don't know if you've read it. If not, go read it. Definitely, it's a definite read. You should go and read that book. That's it for me, guys. Peace out.